Welcome in to the Late Night Gamecock Show. Today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. On behalf of myself, Alex, we're so happy to have you all here tonight. Tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about the basketball game that happened last night. South Carolina defeated Clemson 91-88 in overtime. Obviously, a tremendous win for the men's basketball program. Honestly, Alex, I think it's one of the best games in the rivalry's history. South Carolina Clemson, that is, especially on the men's side. We're going to talk about the Citrus Bowl. Alex and I are going to give our preview for that particular game. We're going to have some football news and notes from Williams-Brice Stadium, things that Alex has picked up being around the program. Also, press conferences, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. But before we hit the intro, Alex, we're not going to talk much about this. Mike Shula was announced as the offensive coordinator today. There was a press conference with Shane Beamer and Mike Shula. Alex was there. If you want to get our in-depth breakdown of Mike Shula as offensive coordinator at South Carolina, last week, Alex, JC Sherbert, and I did a tremendous deep dive into Mike Shula and the decision-making process for him to become the next offensive coordinator, what it means for South Carolina, his history as a coach. Obviously, he has a lot of ties to the NFL. He was the head coach at Alabama. But Alex, they can go back and watch that show, listen to it if they so choose. But Alex, were there any major takeaways today from the press conference that you can share with some of the viewers tonight? You'll have to unmute yourself, buddy. Alex, you're muted, my friend. Oh my gosh. Live television. There you go, Alex.
You got me?
We got you. Any takeaways from Mike Shula today?
Yeah, I think, the most interesting thing was just kind of listen to Shane Beamer talk about the process of how quickly it came about that he hired Mike Shula. I think it was, it sounded like it was a pretty quick process, and one that, once Dow Loggins left to go to Appalachian State to be the head coach, I think it went pretty quickly, and Shane really keyed in on promoting Mike Shula to OC. And, I thought that seemed like the correct move to make, just with, obviously his track record of being an offensive coordinator. But then, Shane Beamer's big on continuity in the program, and I think that really fit into that because he's been in the program for a year, worked with Lenora Sellers, and I think that was just a big key part of it. And obviously everybody knows the type of offensive coordinator he is. So it's going to be fun to see what he can do with not only Lenora Sellers, but the rest of that offense here.
Yeah, I think that everyone should be excited about Mike Shula. Alex, was there anything today about who would call plays in the bowl game? Did that come up today?
He didn't really speak too much on it. It sounds like, they're trying to maybe keep that in-house a little bit. Haven't decided yet. We'll see. In my opinion, I think it probably end up being Mike Shula. I think you just have to think that Dow Loggins is going to have a lot going on, with being a head coach at App State, especially these days with the portal and all that. I don't know that for sure. And, there wasn't any, word one way or the other yet. But if I had to guess, I think it'd end up being Mike Shula calling plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see what happens. This will be our last show before the bowl game. So stay tuned to thebigspur.com. Stay tuned to Shane Beamer press conferences, Gamecocks Online, Gamecocks YouTube. Check all that out. So we won't be able to tell you, but I know that if Alex or JC or Whittle or Hale or Tony get any information there, they'll pass it along. But just a reminder for those of you that just joined the show, tonight we're going to talk the basketball game last night, give our Citrus Bowl preview, football news and notes from around Williams-Brice, and then we will definitely hit up the transfer portal and talk about that towards the end of the show. But Alex, that being said, will you roll the credits so we can get into tonight's show?
Welcome to the Late Night Gamecock Show from Chief Sports South Carolina. Here are your hosts, Matt Anderson and Alex Jones of thebigspur.com.
Welcome back in, everyone. The big news from Gamecock land right now is on the hardwood. It's kind of crazy to think with everything going on in the transfer portal and bowl season that, South Carolina, the news is on the hardwood last night. The Gamecocks defeated Clemson, those damned old Clemson Tigers, by a score of 91-88 in Colonial Life Arena. The game went to overtime. Alex Jones was there. Some quick notes from the game. I always say in college basketball, especially college basketball, you want to have the best run of the game and the last run of the game, preferably, and that usually leads to a victory. Looking at this particular game, South Carolina did jump out in front. I always look at KenPom. If you break it up into 4 quarters, South Carolina jumped out to a 16-10 lead over the first 10-ish minutes of the game. Played pretty even with Clemson the second part of the first half. Gamecocks taking a 34-26 lead at halftime. Alex, let's talk about the first half real quick. I thought it was interesting. South Carolina jumped out to that 14-point lead relatively quickly, and then Clemson fought back and had a 14-0 run of their own, and the Gamecocks followed that up with an 8-0 run.
Yeah.
So who had the best run? I don't know in the first half, but those 6 points that the Gamecocks had an advantage of over the first 10-ish minutes of the game really proved to be very important last night. So, Alex, what were your takeaways on the first half?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was a first half of runs. I mean, South Carolina got off at, I think, going into the game, you thought South Carolina was going to have to get off to a good start in this game, and they did. Had a double-digit lead there, and we're really playing well. Miles Studi was really starting to connect, and Nick Pringle was playing well. Colin Murray-Bowles was playing well. So you got off to the start that you wanted to get off to, and then kind of had that dip a little bit where Clemson went on that 14-0 run to tie the game, in the first half. And I thought South Carolina did a pretty good job of running into that. I think South Carolina could have probably kind of ducked their heads and let that one get to them, but they didn't. They kind of continued to fight and ended up having the lead at halftime. And I think that was big. Their defense on Chase Hunter in the first half was really good. Obviously that turned in the second half. He turned it up there in the second half, but I thought defensively they played really well in the first half.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy that probably knows a little bit more about college basketball than me, considering he played college basketball. But I was talking to him today, and I brought up the point. Lamont Paris, through 3 years at South Carolina, has not called timeouts when the other team goes on runs very often. He tends to allow his players to play through it. And talking to the person I was speaking with today, he said, look, I'm not saying it's a younger coach thing, but, the coaches that have come up here recently that have become head coaches from being assistants or, have less than 10 years of head coaching experience, he's seeing more and more them letting their players fight through adversity and fight through those runs and not trying to control the game as much as you might have seen in the 90s or the early 2000s where, let's stop this run. We're going to call a timeout. We're at home. Let's regroup. Let's figure it out because these guys need to play free and they need to know that their coach has trust in them. And for the Gamecocks to answer with an 8-0 run of their own to push that lead back up to 8 points at halftime eventually, I thought was huge. I mentioned this on Inside the Gamecocks today. Colin Murray-Bowles for being a potential lottery pick, potential first-round pick in this upcoming NBA draft. That's where he's projected. Not saying he's going. I don't know. But, he's not getting the benefit of the whistle that you see a lot of these star players kind of get. He picked up 3 fouls in the first half. I thought it was huge that the Gamecocks were able to maintain and build a lead with him out of the game for an extended periods of that first half. I thought – can't say enough about Morris Ugasuk. Obviously, you mentioned Miles Studi earlier. Nick Pringle got in on the action. Jamari Thomas kind of kept them afloat. And I think that was huge for this Gamecock team to play a quality team like Clemson, a top 25 team in the country, a team that's already beaten Kentucky, and for the Gamecocks to be able to weather that storm without their best player on the court.
Yeah, we could probably have a whole nother podcast on the refereeing last night because there were some interesting calls in that game, but especially for all the best players that came to get in foul trouble. But I thought Colin Murray-Bowles really played well in that first half, and once he got into foul trouble, it was a part of just having to battle that foul trouble. And I thought he did a really good job of that. There were a few times where he could have been in a situation to get a foul, and he didn't. He played it smart and didn't, and pretty much lasted in that game as long as he could. And South Carolina was dealing with some foul trouble there, not only with Murray-Bowles, but Nick Pringle was also in foul trouble. So as they got into the second half, they did a really nice job of managing that foul trouble and kind of keeping guys fresh and ready for that overtime, for what ended up being an overtime period.
Yeah, and we might as well move into the second half here. For as slow as that first half was in a lot of ways for Clemson and South Carolina at different points. I mean, the Gamecocks did muster 34 points in the first half, Clemson 26. Clemson was stuck on 10 or 12 points, which seemed like 5-6 minutes. And I was wondering if Clemson would even get to 50 points in the game at that point. But in the second half, offense came out and the team started running and they started playing a little faster. Looking at that, the second half, Clemson scored 54 points and the Gamecocks scored 46, which, forced overtime. Colin Murray-Boyle picking up his fourth foul with 16 minutes to go on what I would consider, a questionable call, a call that, you don't really see called very often. I mean, by the rule book, it is a foul, but the Gamecocks still found a way to keep it close. And, they bumped that lead up to 6, 7, 8 points in the last, 3-4 minutes of the game. And Chase Hunter just did Chase Hunter stuff. I mean, I think he's a really good player. I know that he can get hot from three, but I mean, he was NBA Jam in Fuego towards the end of that game, finishing off with that runner for about 35 feet, banking it off the glass. I mean, sometimes it's just your night. And, what was the atmosphere like in the arena, but also going into overtime? What did that feel like, Alex?
Well, yeah, the atmosphere throughout the night was awesome. You had to wonder just what it turned out would be, just because they're out of school. That was first day after commencement, graduation, all that, and they came out, and the student section was pretty well packed, and which was great for South Carolina. And the arena was packed, and after that incredible shot by Chase Hunter, you wonder what South Carolina going to do to respond, because that's a tough moment. I mean, he missed a few free throws where he could have put the game away, and he makes an incredible shot. You wondered, what's the mentality of that team going to be like? But they, Colin Murray-Boyle kind of mentioned it post game. They came right back out, kind of like with the energy that they started the game with, knowing that they got to get the job done, and they did that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. When Colin Murray-Boyle came back into the game with a shade under 10 minutes to go, he really just took over in a way that shows you why he's looked at as a potential first round pick. Phenomenal game by Colin Murray-Boyle. If you look at the stats, Ken Palm always gives an MVP. Obviously, Colin was the MVP of the game, despite Chase Hunter going for 27. JB made a great point on Inside the Gamecocks today. When you have Colin Murray-Boyle and Nick Pringle combining to go 15 of 18 from the field, only missing 3 shots, big time. Anytime you win the rebounding battle, it's going to be a good night for your team. South Carolina did that. And I thought, just overall, my final thoughts on this is, South Carolina got that elusive quad one win they were searching for the entire non-conference slate. I think that it will likely hold up as a quad one win, at worst, a high quality quad two win, depending on how Clemson goes the rest of the year. But to do what the Gamecocks did without Colin Murray-Boyle in the game for long stretches kind of proved that I think, making that extra pass, the ball movement, Miles Studi, I mean, that corner three is a layup for him. It's a shot that he'll make more often than not. And I think for the first time this season, you're really seeing the ball move in the way it moved last year, being patient, shot clock, all that kind of stuff. So really excited for that. Looking ahead, you always got to look ahead with this stuff, Alex. And, just looking at South Carolina right now, Ken Palm, they're 66 in the country. Pretty much staying stagnant for where they started the season. But you got 2 games against Radford and Presbyterian coming up. Radford's probably a better team than PC right now. Radford's 178th in Ken Palm, PC's 243. Gamecocks are favored to win both of those games. It would be great to see the Gamecocks get to 10-3 in the non-con. It would have been great to see them, 11-2, something like that. Maybe got one of those. Maybe get that North Florida game back, or one of those Indiana Xavier games. I do think that if Indiana and South Carolina played on a neutral court right now, just based on how Indiana is kind of tracking, a game would be a lot closer. But that was just a perfect storm for the Gamecocks going to Indiana with the football team rolling, a bye week for the football team, Assembly Hall. So we'll see how that Indiana game looks in hindsight. But South Carolina's in a good spot. Then they start SEC play. You're going to see all this bracketology, all this net stuff. I really urge everybody not to start looking at the net and the quad one wins and quad two wins and losses and all that until at least we get to mid-January. Mid-January, late January, everything's going to take shape. The net is still a little funky with mid-majors and, just hasn't had enough smoothing yet. So South Carolina is only going to rise in the net despite wins and losses the rest of the way. And every game on their schedule outside of Radford and PC are going to be quad 1 games at minimum, quad 2 games. They're done with the Q3. So just take care of business against Radford and PC and then get into the heart of SEC play. Alex, I said this on the show earlier today. If you look at the AP poll, Ken Palm, Bart Torvik, Evan Mia, whatever, they all say it's really Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Florida, and one other school, Tennessee, that are the top 5 teams in the SEC. Looking at the calendar, the Gamecocks or the schedule only play those 5 teams that combine 6 times. So, it is rather favorable for the Gamecocks once they get into SEC play. They have 2/3 of their games against top third teams. So maybe they can pick up some wins there. But Alex, before we move on to some news and notes around Gamecock football land, anything you want to add on basketball before we head over there?
Yeah, just obviously, a pivotal win for South Carolina last night. Going into that game, South Carolina, as you mentioned, didn't have that marquee, conference win that really all the other SEC teams did. And, getting that win, really it's way too early still to talk about NCAA tournament stuff. But that win kind of gets you back in the conversation to where if you can take care of business in the SEC, you got a pretty good chance just because, you and I have both seen it, everybody's seen it. The SEC this year is unreal. It's top to bottom, by far the best league in the country. And, South Carolina did what it had to do in that game, did the win, and now you finish out the non-conference the way you should, and then you go right into this SEC slate and see what you can do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Excited for basketball. You got one more college football game and bowl season for everyone to watch and enjoy. But basketball is here, and it's time to have Colonial Life Arena packed out like it was last night going forward because the team does need you, and you do make a difference just like you do in football. Moving on to some coaches and player awards. Alex, I've been keeping a running tally. I'm sure I'm going to miss some of these because obviously when you have success on the football field, the awards and the accolades follow. But I'm just going to run through these pretty quickly for everybody, and we can have any kind of conversation you want, Alex. But Shane Beamer won the Associated Press and the USA Today SEC Coach of the Year. Shane Beamer is one of 18 semifinalists for the George Munger Award for College Football Coach of the Year. He's one of 5 finalists for the Bobby Dodd Trophy, which is given to coaches that embody the award's pillars of scholarship, leadership, and integrity, both on and off the field. And he's a finalist for the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year Award by the Football Writers Association of America. Obviously, give Shane a lot of kudos, a lot of credit. Not a lot of people thought the Gamecocks would be in a position to be, right on the verge of a college football playoff, if not should have been in. So I'm sure you agree with me, Alex. All of these accolades and recognitions are well-deserved for Shane Beamer.
Yeah, absolutely. He and the staff did a phenomenal job with this team this year, getting them ready to go. And, when you had those early losses, they bounced back and won straight to end the regular season. All these awards, about so all.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other ones. Clayton White, obviously defensive coordinator at South Carolina, a semifinalist for the Broyles Award, which is college football's top assistant coach. I don't think he won that award. I think it has been named, but just to be up there, just tells you what you need to know about Shane. Shane stuck with Clayton White when a lot of people in social media and message boards are ready to fire him after Florida a couple years back, and a couple times in between. Wanted to fire Dowell Loggins. Sometimes you just got to trust the process. So happy for Shane and happy for Clayton there. Kyle Kennard, it's a laundry list of awards that he has either won or been nominated for. He won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy, the 2024 National Defensive Player of the Year. Kyle Kennard edged out Jahdae Barron, Abdul Carter, and Mason Graham. Those are a who's who of college football's best defensive players. So for him to get that award, it's the first time a Gamecock has ever won the National Defensive Player of the Year. So really, really happy for Kyle Kennard. When you look at everything else with Kyle Kennard here, first team All-American by Walter Camp, the AFCA, Football Writers Association of America, and the Reese Senior Bowl. Second team All-American by the AP and SEC coaches, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. First team All-SEC by the AP, the coaches, and USA Today. I mean, I can't remember outside of Jadeveon Clowney where a defensive lineman at South Carolina has had all the accolades that are coming for Kyle Kennard. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but Shane Beamer did say in the press conference today that Kyle Kennard was opting out of the bowl game, or most likely opting out. Maybe another player, Shane said today. But, Kyle Kennard, Gamecock fans love you. They appreciate you. And, we all wish Kyle the absolute best when he moves over to the NFL here in a little bit. Nick Emunwari, if it wasn't for Kyle Kennard, we'd be saying, wow, what a season of accolades for Nick. Nick was a Sporting News first-team All-American, an AP first-team All-American, a second-team All-American by the Football Writers Association of America and CBS Sports, first-team All-SEC according to the SEC coaches, the AP, USA Today, and College Football Nation. Just great for Nick. Nick was a camp eval kind of during that COVID time period. Everyone wondered why they were taking a 3-star. I mean, what he's grown into is absolutely fantastic. Raheem Sanders won the 2024 Comeback Player of the Year award. Kai Kroger was a second-team All-American with the Football Writers Association of America, semifinalist for the Ray Guy Award. SEC coaches, all freshman team, Lenore Sellers, Josiah Thompson, and Dylan Stewart. And Alex, I'll tell you right now, if I had to pick 3 positions that I want all freshmen on going forward with my team, it would be left tackle, defensive end, and quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, think about the future. That's 3 key spots on any team. And, your left tackle is a guy who's going to be around for a while. A guy like Norris Sellers, saw what he did at the end of the season. He just continued to improve every game. And then you think about Dylan Stewart, one of the best freshmen in the country, and turned in an incredible freshman season. Really excited to see what he can do in the bowl game as he kind of takes into that spotlight at that edge position with, potentially Kyle Kennard opting out of the bowl game. So, it's those guys, absolutely deserve every award they got, and they're going to be fun to watch continue to develop at South Carolina.
Yeah, no, I think I missed some. I know that Lenoris was SEC Freshman of the Year, and I'm sure I missed some accolades. I did it, quickly, and I was jotting down notes over the past couple of weeks. If I missed a player, y'all let me know in the chat. We definitely want to give them credit. I think the next big piece of news, and it was already touched on in the chat here, but the coaches got new contracts. So all 10 on-field assistant coaches have received a raise and an extension. I'm not going to get into the salary numbers because there's really nothing to debate. It's just, the price that Carolina is paying for those coaches. You can find that online if you want to. John Whittle has an article in the Big Spur right now breaking it all down. But what I thought was really key, Alex, is all 3 coordinators, Clayton White, Mike Shula, and Joe DeCamelis, all are signed for the next 3 seasons. All of their contracts expire on December 31st, 2027. And on top of that, assistant coaches Sean Elliott and Torian Gray are also under contract through 2027. Assistant coaches Marquel Blackwell, Mike Furry, Sterling Lucas, Travian Robertson, and Lonnie Teasley are all signed through December 31st, 2026. So all of these coaches are under contract for at least the next 2 years, and some of them 3 years. I think it's great news for both recruiting, the portal, high school, and then also the development of the players to know that when you come to South Carolina, outside of a crazy circumstance, you should be able to count on these guys to be here at least through your freshman and sophomore year, maybe your junior year, and potentially you're going pro at that point. So, Alex, your thoughts on the coaching extensions, and were you surprised by anything?
No, I think it was all well-deserved. I think it's one thing, you mentioned from a recruiting aspect that those type of things are big just from a high school recruiting standpoint for those players to see that their potential, position coaches are going to be around for a while. And, I think it's, for coaches down the road too, there's going to be times where South Carolina has to hire new coaches. And, I think it's one thing where, Shane Beamer can say that, look, these guys had really good years and we rewarded them and they had raises and extensions. So I think it's big from that standpoint too, to show that South Carolina is really committed in that aspect of it. So I think it was, a good all around for South Carolina, and Clayton White did get that extension, well-deserved for the way the defense played this year. And, I think all those guys had well-deserved extensions and raises.
Yeah, and there's unconfirmed things that I've heard, and I always like to get two sources on something before I say anything, at least. But there are rumors that there were a couple assistant coaches that were looked at as coordinators at the Power 4 level, or head coaches at lower levels, and they decided to stay at South Carolina, and that's where they want to be. Look, these things can change. There are buyouts on contracts, all of that, but at least through the recruiting season, we didn't see any coaches depart. And usually you see some coaches depart right after the class is signed. They do their due diligence. They get the kid to school and they say, okay, I might have this other opportunity. And we'll see. There's still going to be more dominoes to fall in the coaching ranks. But for right now, at this time, all the coaches are well compensated and they're all around for a good little while. So that is fantastic. I think I did Mike Furry get passing game coordinator title as well, Alex?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, there were some questions on the Big Spur about that. I'm sure that he's going to have, and he already has a role in, the passing charts, the passing trees, all of that. But, when you do put a coordinator name in a title, it makes it a little bit harder to leave for a, lateral position, because all of a sudden you have coordinator your name and you're not just wide receivers coach. So buyouts are associated with all of that. So I thought that was, sometimes you see titles in name only, but I know that Coach Furry is well deserved of that title and what he's doing. So you never know why these different titles come up, but I wouldn't read too much into it if you're worried about a dynamic shift in the offense. I think some people were saying, well, he's just going to do all this stuff that Mike Shula might not want to do. No, that's probably not going to be the case. But we're going to take a quick sponsor break. When we get back, we're going to dive into the Citrus Bowl versus Illinois. So, Alex, roll that beautiful sponsorship.
Mike here for one of the better dining options in the capital city. When I first moved there, I asked people around the radio station, where are the best wings? Well, the consensus was D's Wings. That was then. Today, they still have the best wings, but it's so much more now in their new location at 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia. Yeah, they get voted the best wings on a routine basis. Yes, they get voted the best sports bar on a routine basis, but they're not just about wings, and really, they're not just a sports bar. It is a family-run local restaurant and bar with 20 TVs and 25 beers on tap. And how about these daily specials? Every Monday night at D's, you've got 75-cent wings from 4 until closing. Tacos on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, 18 wings and a pitcher of beer for $29. You've also got ribs and oyster bucket specials on Thursday. And no matter how big the party is, 20 or more, no problem. Just call ahead of time and they'll take terrific care of you. They'll do takeout as well. And guess what? A human will answer the phone and take the order. Billy and his staff do an outstanding job. Check out D's 415 Meeting Street in West Columbia.
I agree. Make sure you check out D's. For my money, the best wings in Columbia, and it's right by Colonial Life Arena, so you can go right over that bridge, get there, and grab some wings before a Gamecock basketball game coming up. But moving on to the Citrus Bowl, this Illinois breakdown, Alex, we were all primed and ready to talk about this last Tuesday. That just take you guys behind the curtain a little bit. Alex and I had done the research. We had broken everything down. We were going to talk all about this bowl game. And then the Mike Shula news broke, and we knew that we needed to be talking about Mike Shula. So JC hopped on, and we had a great hour-and-a-half show. So, again, if you missed it last week, go back and check out the Mike Shula episode. But Gamecocks are going to take on number 20 Illinois in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl on New Year's Eve at 3 p.m. on ABC. First off, Alex, I love that it's New Year's Eve, because you still have New Year's Day to do anything you want to do with the family. If you have any bad habits, get them out of the way. New Year's Eve, the calendar flips over on January 1st. You can do all that. But a 3 p.m. game allows you to still, partake in any kind of festivities you have planned, any New Year's Eve parties, even if it's just hanging out with the family. You kind of get the game over and done with. It's not a night game. You're giving up in Williams-Brice Stadium. So I do like the 3 p.m. Kickoff, and you probably like it too, Alex. Will y'all stay in Orlando that night, or will y'all be heading back after the game? Might have lost Alex here. Okay. I lost Alex. So anyway, the Gamecocks opened as a 10.5 point favorite in this game. I looked just today, and the Gamecocks are a 9.5 point favorite with an over-under of 47.5 points. So if you just go by the implied point total according to Vegas, right now you're looking at a 28.5 point South Carolina victory. 28.5 points for the Gamecocks, 19 for Illinois. So that's kind of what the Vegas odds say. I really wouldn't be surprised if that number gets bet down a little bit with the Kyle Kennard news. Maybe another portal person, not portal, but another opt-out, I should say. But so far, only one opt-out for the Gamecocks is Kyle Kennard. Will it change? Maybe. I don't expect very many. I think a lot of these guys are ready to go get that 10th win. There's only been so many 10-win seasons in Gamecock football history. And I do think that the Gamecocks, if they are able to pick up this win against Illinois and do it convincingly, could finish in the top 10 of the AP poll, which also hasn't happened very often for the Gamecocks. But just right off the top, when you talk about opt-outs, Illinois' top wide receiver, Pat Bryant, has opted out for the game. He's going to prepare for the NFL draft. So when you look at what that leaves behind, it leaves behind a pretty sizable void. Pat Bryant had 54 catches for 984 yards and 10 touchdowns this year for the Fighting Illini. But also notably, Pat Bryant averaged 18.2 yards per reception. So this is a big loss for Illinois. There was only one other player on the team for the Fighting Illini who had more than 17 receptions this year, and that is Zachary Franklin, a 6'1", 190-pound senior. He has 51 catches for 613 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, Alex, just off the cuff, we know a little bit about Illinois, but how big of a blow is this to not have Pat Bryant for this bowl game?
Yeah, he's a guy who's Luke Altmaier's, the quarterback at Illinois' top target this year. They've got some other guys there that have been had pretty solid seasons. I think Zachary Franklin's a guy to watch. 613 yards and 3 touchdowns on 51 catches. So he'll probably kind of jump into that number one role for them in this bowl game. And then Colin Dixon and Hank Beatty are two guys who had over 200 yards receiving this year. But obviously a huge blow for them to lose Pat Bryant, who when you watch him was. You could obviously, really talented guy and a guy who probably has a career in the NFL coming up, obviously. So I think with him, it's going to be one where they're going to have a few guys step up, and the South Carolina's going to have to kind of account for those other guys who are going to step up into that role. But, it'll be interesting to see how they kind of deal with that and how – because Luke Altmaier is a really good quarterback, but you have to see just how things go with losing your number one target.
Yeah, and some other Illinois notes just off the cuff here. For those of you that don't know, haven't really followed Illinois, got to be honest, I don't think I watched more than 15 minutes of Illinois the entire season, but I can dig into stats, and I can tell you what I found there. So Illinois finished the season 9-3 overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten. When you look at their marquee games of the season, and I'm looking at 2 games in particular, at Penn State and at Oregon, they lost both of those games, on average giving up about 30 points per game while scoring only 8 points per game. That's probably the closest comp that I can find to South Carolina is Penn State and Oregon. Probably more Penn State than Oregon, to be honest. But, I think South Carolina had every right to be in the college football playoff. They did beat a couple ranked teams at the time this year. They beat ranked at the time 19th Kansas 23-17 on September 7th. At the time, Nebraska was ranked. They beat Nebraska 31-24 in overtime. And they did beat Michigan, who was ranked 24th at the time, 21-7 on October 19th. Their lone loss outside of Penn State and Oregon this season came to Minnesota, and they lost at home by a final score of 25-17. Another notable thing, take this for whatever you think it's worth, but they did beat Purdue 50-49 in overtime at home this year. Purdue is probably the worst power 3, 4, however many powers there are now in college football. So maybe that was an outlier. But at the time of the ranking, at the time of this game, South Carolina will be the 3rd highest ranked opponent that Illinois has played on the day of the game. Gamecocks are sitting 15th in the country. On offense, in their 10 Power 5 games this season, Illinois averages 27 points per game. Some quarterback notes, Alex already touched on this. Luke Altmaier is the quarterback. He's thrown all but 5 of Illinois' passes this year. For the season, he's passed for 2,543 yards, 21 touchdowns versus 5 interceptions with a 60.9% pass completion rate. And he also has 96 rushes for 219 yards and 4 touchdowns. And he's been sacked 31 times this season for a loss of 194 yards in total. Like we said, with Pat Bryant opting out of the game, that is 38.6% of Luke Altmaier's passing yards for the season. So obviously it's a big loss. That's a huge number. When you look at Penn State and Oregon, we'll keep talking about Altmaier. He completed 33 of his 60 passes against those two teams for 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. He averaged 173 yards passing per game against Penn State and Oregon. And as you can imagine, Pat Bryant accounted for 37.5% of those passing yardage against the quality teams. But what's really interesting to me is that the second leading wide receiver, Zachary Franklin, who we talked about at the top here, he accounted for 66.4% of the yards against Penn State and Oregon. So I don't know if Pat Bryant was the decoy, if they just put all their attention on Pat Bryant and let Franklin kind of go nuts there. But in those 2 games, that's only 115 yards receiving for Franklin. So I don't know. We got to see who, like Alex talked about, who's that 3rd and 4th wide receiver going to be. That's going to have to be the 2nd or 3rd option. Their 3rd and 4th leading wide receivers combined for 33 catches, 441 yards, and 1 touchdown. So who steps up? Running back Josh McCray and tight end Tanner Arkin are the only other players on the team with at least 10 catches. So Alex, let's kind of, before we move over to the rushing attack for Illinois, let's put a bow on the passing game. I mean, in my mind, I think they're going to be playing possession style football, like, short passes, try and get people open, nickel and dime down the field.
Yeah, I think so. And, the thing with Luke Altmaier is he can also get it done with his legs too. Like I think I watched him in that Nebraska game kind of early in the season. He's the one who kind of, not maybe to the effect of Lenora Sellers, but he's one who, if you don't keep him contained, he can find a way to get a first down and hurt you on a 3rd and long. So the key for South Carolina in this game, just kind of looking forward. They've still got a few weeks of the game, but one of the keys is just containing him and keeping him in the pocket and make him try to beat you with the arm, which he's shown he can do multiple times this year. But I think that's going to be one of the keys, is just finding ways to keep him in the pocket and not let him get those first downs on some of the scramble drills.
Yeah, and it's interesting looking at the running backs here. They have kind of a 3-headed rushing attack. Josh McCray, 104 carries for 495 yards and 8 touchdowns. Aiden Lowry, I don't know. 81 carries for 522 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Caden Fegan, 67 carries for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, you're still looking at 15 touchdowns on the ground for their running backs, and they played 12 games. So, they are a very balanced football team. I think that this is going to be a game where they try and churn some clock, keep Lenore Sellers off the field, maybe try and tire the defense out. But they're definitely going to take some shots. They have to take some shots in this game. So we'll see what happens. I mean, bowl games are always big because, Ryan Brewer stepped up against Ohio State and had 3 touchdowns in a game when a lot of people outside of South Carolina didn't know who Ryan Brewer was. So you never know in a bowl game who can make an impact. But, moving on to defense, their defense gives up 371.8 yards per game. They give up 220 yards passing per game and 149 yards rushing per game. Coincidentally enough, that is pretty much exactly what South Carolina does on the season from a total offensive perspective. To Penn State, to Illinois' credit, they've only played 2 non-Power 5 or Power 4 teams this season. They give up 25.6 points per game. The defense has 29 sacks on the season, 55 tackles for loss, 12 interceptions, and 13 forced fumbles, recovering 7 of them. So they're forcing a shade over 1.5 turnovers a game. To look at that number, 12 interceptions and 13 forced fumbles. I mean, that's 2 times the ball is potentially on the ground or in the air for a turnover. And the 29 sacks is a relatively healthy number. The big guy on defense, Alex, I think you'll agree, is linebacker Gabe Jacas. He has 8 of their 29 sacks. That's over 25% of them. And he has 10 of their tackles for loss. Gamecocks will have to keep an eye on him. No other player has more than 3 sacks on the season. DB Xavier Scott has 4 interceptions on the season. So let's see how they use him in the bowl game. Will he stick with one wide receiver? Will he move around the field? But, interestingly, DB Torrey Cox also has 3 interceptions on the season. And they have 2 other guys that have 2 interceptions on the season. So they do have some ball hawks back there in the secondary. Special teams, their kicker, David Alano, this is his first year as a kicker. 35 of 36 on extra points this season and 17 of 20 on field goal attempts. And their punter, Hugh Robertson, has 37 punts on the season, averaging 40.8 yards per punt. So they are going to be playing a field position game. So, Alex, with all those numbers and everything I just gave you, what are your overall thoughts here for this particular game?
Yeah, kind of just real quick, sticking defensively, looking at it, Illinois has gotten really good linebacker play this year. You mentioned Gabe Jakai. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but the guy that's 66 tackles. Dylan Rozique had 60 tackles, and then Seth Coleman 53 tackles. Those guys are all in the top 4 in tackles on defense for Illinois this year. So it's going to be interesting to watch South Carolina's rushing attack versus that defense because under Brett Bielema, they've had some pretty good defenses these past few years, and this year they've been pretty solid too. But in this game, I think pretty much in really any bowl game, it's come down to who's going to step up in the big moments because. Who knows, in most bowl games, I don't know if it's going to be in this one just because both teams are really motivated, but, who's going to step up in this game in the bright spotlight. So I think it's one where, the South Carolina's got to limit turnovers in this one, and I think they will. I think that they got better as that with the years went on, especially with Lenora Sellers, and he continued to get better at that. So, find ways to limit turnovers, continue that momentum that you had offensively, and then defensively, just continue what you're doing. Obviously, you won't have Kyle Kennard, but you still got a bunch of players back there who are really motivated, and really the whole team are motivated to get that 10th win on the season.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, I was thinking about this, like our bets. We haven't had a best bet segment in a while. We forgot to do the regular season finale because we were so focused on the Carolina Clemson game. Or maybe we did do that. We forgot to do the championship series. Yeah. The conference championships.
Yeah.
So Alex, I do have a half game lead on you in the running. Since this is our last show of the season, we probably need to go ahead and pick this Gamecock football game. And I guess we probably need to do it against the spread. So you want to go first or you want me to? The over-under is 47.5 and the Gamecocks as of today are 9.5 point favorites.
Okay, I'll go ahead and go first. Since I'm behind, I'll go ahead and go first. I think South Carolina wins this game. I think it spreads at 9.5. I think they find a way to get it to a 2-score game. Maybe like a late touchdown because I think it's close game does a really good job of controlling the clock and all of that. And I think South Carolina wins. I think they cover the spread 9.5.
All right. Well, I'll go against you, Mr. Jones. I do think the Gamecocks will win this game, but I don't know if they'll cover the 9.5. Weird things happen in bowl games. So give me Illinois plus 9.5. Gamecocks win the game. Hear me. They win the game. But Alex is taking the Gamecocks to cover the 9.5. So this will be the game that decides it for us, Alex. All right. So before we get out of here, we definitely need to hit a couple things. And I really hope Alex's internet is okay right now because I'm going to lean on him here a little bit. I think we lost Mr. Jones again, so I apologize for that. When we look at the transfer portal goings and comings, so everybody is interested in the transfer portal right now. Gamecocks, by my count, have 13 players that have entered the transfer portal. Most of you all probably know who they are, but I'm going to run through them quickly. Quarterback Robbie Ashford, he's in the portal. I think he is going to play in the bowl game, according to Shane Beamer. We'll see what happens when it comes down to if he makes a decision and what his new coach might prefer for him. But then you have 3 tight ends, Nick Elkness, Connor Cox, and Reed McKeska. All 3 of those tight ends entered the portal. Now you're looking at a couple slots open for tight ends. Wide receivers, Gamecocks have lost 4, Elijah Caldwell, DeBron Gatling, CJ Adams, and Tyshawn Russell. Running back, the Gamecocks lost DJ Braswell. So lost a running back there. Linebackers, Muhammad Kaba has transferred, and Bengali Kamara transferred midseason. He's already signed with Kansas. Defensive line, Jamal Weiss, and then had some walk-ons, place kicker Daniel Lester, and offensive lineman Neiman Sell. So Gamecocks have lost 13 guys. 11 of those guys are scholarships. But right now, what everybody's interested in, Alex, is what are the Gamecocks doing in the transfer portal? There is one more player that's a high school recruit that the Gamecocks are very much in the thick of things for. He'll be announcing here in a couple weeks at the All-Star game, and that would be Donovan Murph out of Irmo. So we'll see what happens with him. But, been a big couple days for the Gamecocks in the transfer portal. So far, we have 4 public names. I'll run through them really quickly for you. And what's great for in my opinion is of these 4 guys they've gotten so far, all 4 of them either come from the SEC or the ACC and have either a lot of projectables to them, a lot of athleticism to them, a lot of rankings behind their name, or they have quality snaps and been playing for programs for a while. But the first one we'll talk about is a defensive end, Jalen Brown from Missouri. 6'5", 265 pounds. He was a 4-star coming out of high school, and he was the 129th ranked player in the 2024 class. So, 2024, we're still in the year of our Lord, 2024. So that's a guy that's going to have 3 seasons left to play. It was a guy Missouri did not want to lose. They actually had an assistant coach go on Twitter and just say this was a family decision that Jalen made. We wish him all the best. We did not want to lose him. We had big plans for him. And he's a guy that I know for 100% fact the Gamecocks loved coming out of high school and think that he oozes potential. And it's basically the equivalent of getting a 5-star freshman defensive end in a lot of ways, or at least a high 4-star. So, Alex, thoughts on Jalen Brown?
Yeah, I think, not to jump ahead, but I think he and Nick Sharp are going to be 2 guys when we look at the end of this transfer portal class. Could be 2, the under radar guys who make a big impact next season. Jalen Brown, you mentioned the size. He kind of has that size they're looking for at the edge. And Sterling Lucas, I think, and that coaching staff, they really liked what they saw from him in high school. And a really late riser and as a senior, and was committed to Missouri, but South Carolina did like him, as you mentioned. And guy who seemed to, while he was at Missouri, seemed to be coming on a little bit in the middle of the season as he get used to college ball, and was starting to really come on. And I think just it's going to end up being a big pickup for South Carolina. He could be a guy who he and Dylan Stewart could be on either side of the defensive line and really cause problems.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the 6'5", 265 pounders that can move like him don't really grow on trees.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and hit offensive guard Nick Sharp from Wake Forest. Alex just mentioned him. 6'2", 335 pounds, played like over 650, 700 snaps for Wake Forest this year. If you know anything about Wake Forest, they for the last couple of years, they've run that mesh offense, that mesh point offense, where you have to be really smart as an offensive lineman not to get downfield, get in the a legal formation or a legal receiver, a legal man downfield. Just a big boulder of a man at 6'2", 335 pounds. He was a 3-star defensive lineman coming out of high school in the 2021 class. Kind of crazy. We're still talking about the 2021 signing class right now. But he's a guy that the coaches zeroed in on. They got him in for a visit. He felt at home, and he went ahead and made that pledge for the Gamecocks. And if he doesn't, he might start next year. He could start next year, but if nothing else, he's very high quality depth. And I think that he might push to start at one of those guard positions in his last year in college.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had started this year at Wake Forest at right guard, and I think he could really slot into that right guard spot next year. Just thinking, you're going to lose Torricelli Simpkins this year, and I think he could be one that really slides into that spot. Or as you mentioned, just be a guy who provides really quality depth, because South Carolina has some depth at those guard positions. You think of Marquis Anderson's coming back, Truvon Ball. Those guys are going to be, another season under their belt and ready to go. So, at the very least, he's going to provide quality depth, but, who knows, maybe he comes in and works his way into that starting lineup.
Yeah, offensive linemen are really hard to find in the transfer portal, especially someone with as many snaps under his belt and, playing at a Power 5 level, Power 4 level. I don't know what power it is. I keep saying Power 5 as I'm thinking about basketball. But I think the big name that popped today, Alex, is defensive tackle Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy from Texas A&M. 6'3", 310-pound defensive tackle. Everybody knows the Gamecocks need defensive tackles for depth, for rotation pieces, and this guy was a 5-star in the 2022 signing class, 5-star, the 11th ranked player in the country. I don't know what happened at A&M. They had a star-studded class. They've had some coaching transition, but the guy looking for a fresh start. And, when you start out with a fresh start with a guy that was the number 11 player in the country at that size, it's a great player to get molded. Alex, do you know how many years he has left?
I believe 3.
I know he has
Maybe
at least
2.
2.
At
I know
least
he has
2,
at
yeah.
least 2, maybe 3. We just don't know if he redshirted or if he'd
Yeah.
qualify for a red shirt. But yeah, talk about him, Alex. I mean, obviously, would have been a celebrated guy in a recruiting class, but now in the transfer portal era, what have you done as a 5-star?
Yeah, obviously being a former 5-star guy, the potential's there for him. And I think at Texas A&M, they always have good interior defensive linemen. And I think he was just behind some guys and maybe looking for a fresh start. And that's a big pickup for Travian Robertson and those guys. Yeah, they need those defensive tackle numbers just because of what they could be potentially losing this year. And that's one. And I think they're going to keep going after some more guys, have some more guys that they're kind of looking at. But as far as him, I think is a guy who, we didn't probably touch on this enough with these other guys that we've talked about, but they may not just be 1-year guys. They may be, guys who could be in their program for a few years, who could be developed. And not that having 1-year guys is bad, because we've seen what guys like Kamara Bell and Torres Simpkins have done this year. But these guys can come into the program, and a guy like Gabriel who can come in and work under Travian Robinson and continue to develop. And so I think it's a big pickup for South Carolina today, and they're going to continue mining the portal for some defensive tackles.
Yeah, the last guy that also committed today is Jordan Dingle, a tight end. He played at Kentucky, 6'4", 242 pounds. Coming out of high school, he was also in the 2021 class. He was the 480th ranked player nationally, a very high 3-star. Over 4 seasons at Kentucky, and really it's 3 seasons. He only played in 2 games his freshman year, but caught 43 passes for 615 yards and 4 touchdowns. We already went over the numbers the Gamecocks lost in that tight end room already. So they were going to have to bring in at least 1, maybe 2 tight ends, just to be completely honest with you guys. Yeah. You really can't go wrong with a guy that has SEC experience. We all know that the offense at Kentucky this year was essentially a train wreck the entire season. But Josh Simon's a guy that didn't come in with a lot of catches to his name. I think it was 24 catches for maybe 400 yards or something, similar numbers to Jordan Dingle. I'm not saying that Dingle is the type of athlete Simon is, because I really don't know. But, you can do a lot worse than a guy who's actually put up 615 yards in SEC play as a 1-year rental. When you got Brady Hunt, you got Michael Smith, but outside after that, you have the guy that was former walk-on. What's his name? Alex.
Maurice Brown.
Maurice Brown. That's really only 3 guys, and you bring in a 4th guy here, and they might even go get another one. So, thoughts on him, Alex? I think he actually had a touchdown against South Carolina a couple years ago as well.
Yeah, he had a really good 2023 season. I can't remember the numbers. I don't have them up right now, but it was a really good season. And we all know this past year at Kentucky, they had some issues at quarterback where they had some issues there and maybe just couldn't get the ball to him. But I think he's a guy who's proven what he can do at the SEC level, a guy who's, I saw he's listed at 6'4", 242 pounds. So bring some size to that room with Michael Smith and Maurice Brown and those guys, and Mike Tyler, who's coming in too. So I think is one who he's going to provide a lot in the run blocking, but I think they can find some ways to get him going in the passing game too. And he could be a serious problem once you get into the red zone, kind of like a Michael Smith and what we saw he did in that Missouri game. I think, you could see that same kind of thing with Jordan Dingle.
Yeah, we're going to talk just in a second. I appreciate everyone hanging out with us. I know this is something that everybody wants to talk about and hear about. But just some news and notes on the portal. The portal did open on December 9th. It closes on December 28th. So we are going to have a dead period where there is supposed to be no contact between coaches and players. We all know that there are ways to contact players. So, right now the Gamecocks haven't had any portal defections in a couple days at least. So, maybe that dust is settled. You're in bowl practices now. So, the big date to get through is December 28th. It doesn't mean that players that are in the portal have to commit somewhere by December 28th. It just means they have to be in the portal by December 28th. So I expect some more movement there. I'm not expecting too much more from the Gamecocks roster. I'm not going to rule out a surprise or two, but I haven't heard anything about a meaningful contributor, that a name that you guys all know and have seen on Saturdays, potentially moving on. But so that'll close on December 28th, and then it's not going to open again until after spring practice. So it'll open on April 16th and run through April 25th. So you might have some more defections from classes all over or teams all over the country, after spring practice. So Gamecocks will hold some scholarships back for spring transfers for sure. But Alex, as we look towards, the next couple of days and closing out this new year, who are some names that you can talk about that the Gamecocks are expecting for visits, might be after? We all know there's big names, there's small names, there's names no one ever heard about, like Demetrius Knight, that turned into be big time players. So let's give everybody the rundown before we get out of here.
I think one, especially an offensive lineman to keep an eye on, is Dominique Gadis. I think I'm saying that right. Michigan offensive lineman. South Carolina needs a center in the transfer portal because, I think losing for Sean Lee this year, I think he could be a guy who, it sounds like things went well in his visit and could be a guy who comes in and competes for that center position. Maybe, see who he can compete with at that spot, but maybe he could slide in as a starter there. Or Rodney Newsome Jr., a Western Kentucky offensive line transfer. He's scheduled to visit this weekend, and we'll see how things go there. But I think it sounds like South Carolina's in a good spot as well going into that visit. I think one that everybody's probably keeping a really close eye on is Justice Haynes, a Alabama running back transfer guy who's I think currently listed as number one running back about 24/7 Sports in the transfer portal, and a guy I think who maybe just competed with Jam Miller for some spots or for some snaps at Alabama, and he could be a guy who comes in and steps in right in there at day one if South Carolina can find a way to land him. And think about that running back spot, losing Rocket Sanders, but guys like Jawarn Howell coming back, Matthew Fuller, Oscar Attaway. So you need at least one more back in there just because you like to have those type of numbers in there, but he could be a guy who comes in and makes a huge impact right away. One guy who recently visited that you keep an eye on is Andrew Jones, the Grambling linebacker, who I really, really like. I mean, he's a guy who had like 122 tackles this past year at Grambling, 20-something and a half maybe tackles for loss. And a guy he could come in and he can provide an impact right away. Kind of as you mentioned, a Demetrius Knight type who could come in and just a guy who, when you look at him, just already looks like an SEC linebacker. But they're going to have some, competition for him because obviously he's going to be one of the top linebackers right now in the portal. But keep an eye on him. We'll see. He's recently in. We'll see. What we can pick up there from a visit. How the visit went. Another one maybe to keep a close eye on is Ball State cornerback Miles Norwood. I think he's expected in here pretty soon too. And you look at the numbers there at cornerback for South Carolina. They're going to losing O'Donnell Fortune, but having Bakari Swain come back and Judge Collier, who you think would step into those starting positions, but you always want quality depth. Shane Beamer always talks about building competition in every room, and bringing a guy like that who has experience, that'd be, pretty good for South Carolina to continue building competition in Torian Gray's room. But, as you mentioned, the portal's still open, guys will continue to get in their portal, and, there may be guys out there that South Carolina is really going after and they're in a good spot that we don't know about right now. So just, keep in tune, and we'll keep everybody updated, but, keep your eyes open and we'll see what the next few days look like for South Carolina.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like Jalen Brown wasn't a name I was tracking at all, and then he pops. Nick Sharp, we kind of heard about. Gabriel Brownlow-Diddy, we kind of heard about. Jordan Dingle a little bit, but South Carolina has a pretty good close rate when they get these guys on campus, so that's the big thing. Alex, I know that there was a lot of talk over the weekend. There's a lot of talk about big name wide receiver. Any wide receiver names that come to mind that Gamecock fans could look out for, or are they still mining that avenue?
I think they're still looking. Obviously there's big names out there that they were going after, but we'll see. The big thing is just see who pops up in for a visit. That's kind of like one of the first steps in this portal process. But they'll continue to mine the portal to see what they can find, because there's, especially at the wide receiver position, it feels like every day there's big time players entering the portal, and so they'll keep looking, and they still got time to find a few wide receivers, because they probably need 1 to 2. Though you got the big freshman class coming in, got some returning guys coming back, Jared Brown, Mazio Bennett, Nick Harbor. But I think you'd like to find maybe 2 for that room to add some older experience into that room.
Yeah, I see Martin's question in here. Update on Jerome Simmons. I have not heard anything on Jerome Simmons. I think that ship's kind of sailed for South Carolina and him. There was another name up here earlier. Is South Carolina recruiting wide receiver Devontae Ross of Troy, very productive player, kick and punt returner, 76 catches, 1,043 yards, 14 touchdowns. This person, Tim Sullivan, assumes 1 year left. That's not a name that I've heard. Have you heard that name at all, Alex?
I haven't. I know from a South Carolina standpoint, I haven't. Doesn't mean there's nothing going on there, but we'll see if he comes in for a visit. But, that's a guy to probably keep an eye on there.
Well, That's going to do it for us tonight, y'all. We appreciate you so much. We are going to be off the next 2 weeks. I'm spending time with our families and, ringing in the new year. I'm celebrating Christmas and everything there. We appreciate all of y'all for this entire year. It's been a fantastic year spending time with all of you. We say this every single episode, but when you spend time with us, you give us your time, and it's the most valuable thing you have, and we'll never take it for granted. We'll always try and give great information and have a great show for you all to enjoy. But again, we hope that you all have a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and hopefully those Gamecocks find a way to get it done in Orlando. I know there's going to be a lot of Gamecocks there. So again, we'll talk to you in 2025. I want to say 26. But Alex, always good having you here. Thanks for joining tonight. And then I'm sure I'll be talking to you, and we'll see you all soon. Have a great one, y'all. Bye, everyone.